What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Danielle Hallen, and I'm back with another true crime video. And man, you guys, this case. There has been a case that has been quietly building online. Maybe you've seen it already. I feel like a lot of you probably have, or maybe you haven't. But I know for me, at least, the last few weeks, every single one of my social media feeds has been filled with 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard. And her case has stuck with me, which you will very quickly come to learn why. But there are just some cases where I feel like you come across the details or the ridiculous lack of them in this case, and something in your gut is just screaming at you that something is not right. That is this case from the moment information started coming out. And that feeling has done nothing but grow as more information has come to light. 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard vanished from Lompoc, California. What began as a quiet school-initiated welfare check has quickly escalated into a multi-state search involving the FBI. All of this has only been unfolding for about a month now. So this is like one of the freshest cases that I've ever covered on my channel. As of this recording, Melodee has still not been found. The details are still very slowly coming out, so this video is not going to be wrapped up in a pretty bow. You're going to leave here with a lot of questions, but that's just how these newer cases go. It's definitely one where I need you guys to do whatever you can to share information on this case and keep your eyes out for updates, because there's a huge chance that Melodee is still alive and well out there. It's very possible that she's in someone's care right now. Several people may have come across her in multiple different states and have no idea they were looking at a missing child. And the only way to close those gaps, figure out how and where Melodee vanished, which is still a huge question in this case, is by getting her face out in front of as many people as possible. So let's go ahead and jump right into the details. So this all really began on October 14th, 2025, when Lompoc Unified School District ended up contacting Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office to request a welfare check at the Buzzard residence on Mars Avenue in Vandenberg Village. Apparently, just 2 months earlier, in August of 2025, Ashlee, who is Melodee's mother, brought Melodee into the district office to finalize enrollment in their independent study program. And so it was a remote schooling option. There's minimal in-person contact, but obviously still like regulations and expectations. And from the school's perspective, this was just your standard start of the year appointment. Staff ended up saying, Melodee was quiet. She was polite, just your average 9-year-old. Everything at that point seemed perfectly routine. But in the weeks that followed, the first check-in window for Melodee came and went with no activity. There were no class logins. There were no packet pickups. There was no response to the school's follow-ups. And weeks ended up passing. The school started to call Melodee's mother, email. They even mailed out notices because Melodee still wasn't attending or turning in any of her work. And so I'm sure a lot of people that worked in the school district hoped there was an explanation to this, that maybe they could chalk this up to a simple switch to another program. Parents change their minds all the time, and there's so many different options out there, from different curriculums you can get in person, different curriculums online. But when none of those notices were returned and no explanation ever came from Ashlee, Melodee's mom, the school had no choice but to escalate. So they made this welfare check, and deputies arrived shortly after the call, and Ashlee immediately answered the door, but Melodee was not with her. And so deputies asked where Melodee was, a pretty simple question that any parent should be able to answer. But Ashlee, for whatever reason, wouldn't or couldn't. Now, according to the sheriff's office, she offered no verifiable explanation at all for her daughter's whereabouts. Her answers were super vague. They were inconsistent. She couldn't give them a date, a time, a location, no person that she might be with, nothing at all. And so it was quickly understood that this was not just a misunderstanding on the school's end. This was no paperwork error or a switch of curriculum. Melodee was in fact unaccounted for, and even her mother couldn't say why. Immediately, authorities decided to search the home that day to just confirm that Melodee wasn't there and also to look for any clues. But Melodee was nowhere in the house. There were also no signs of a struggle. There was no packed bag, no evidence of injury. I mean, there was nothing for authorities to go on. Just this missing little girl, and a mom was like, "What do you mean? I've got no idea where she is. Now, given her age and the complete lack of answers from her only guardian, the sheriff's office immediately classified her as an at-risk missing child, and the deeper search for Melodee began. And I'm sure at this point you're hearing all of this information and you're asking yourself the exact same question that the deputies were. The school hadn't had a single sign of Melodee since seeing her in person back in August. Her own mother hadn't reported her as missing, hadn't called anyone looking for her, and now when asked directly where her 9-year-old daughter is, Ashlee has no answers. I mean, I don't even think she was able to give the last day she saw her daughter. I mean, there's no explanation. How on earth does something like that happen? How does a 9-year-old little girl become completely unaccounted for, and the one person who should have answers doesn't? And so to understand how any of this could happen, we have to look at what ended up being the discovery of an extremely isolated life that Melodee and her mother were living, cut off from essentially everyone else in the world. Now, Melodee Buzzard, like I've said, is 9 years old. And in most cases, this is where I would tell you guys about the little moments that make someone who they are. You know, the sports that she played, the art projects that she brought home, her favorite color, the dreams that she talked about, what she wanted to be when she was older. But in this case, we don't have any of that. Melodee grew up in Vandenberg Village, a quiet residential area of Lompoc, California, and unfortunately, it seems there were troubles from even when she was an infant. Her father, Rubiel Meza, died in a motorcycle crash back in 2016 when Melodee was only 6 months old. And so from that day forward, her mother, Ashlee Buzzard, who is a key piece in this case, ended up being her sole caretaker, and ultimately the only adult who decided who, if anyone, would ever be a part of Melodee's world. And for most of Melodee's life, that world was tiny, I dare to say non-existent. Now, paternal relatives have said that after Melodee's father's death, there was a clear decline in Ashlee's mental well-being.
Miranda says Ashlee's mental state had drastically declined since 2016, raising red flags around the time Melodee was 6 months old. Miranda said she was planning to drop by her daughter's house when Melodee was only an infant. That's when she got a call from authorities.
About 15 minutes later, a sheriff calls me. He says, I'm at your daughter's house in Orchid, and I was just getting ready to take your granddaughter Melodee with me to CPS because we're getting ready to take your daughter to the hospital.
When Miranda arrived, she says the house was a mess.
Couldn't believe it was my daughter. I mean, the house was in disarray. There were raw eggs in pans. There was rotten food in the fridge that I think she was trying to give my granddaughter.
Contact slowly faded, phone numbers changed, moves happened, and by the time Melodee was reported missing, the paternal side of her family came forward and said that they hadn't even seen her or spoken to her in over 4 years. And even Ashlee's own mom said that she hadn't spoken to her daughter or granddaughter in about 2. But unfortunately, that isolation wasn't limited only to family. Neighbors came forward and said that they almost never saw Melodee outside of the house, and when they did, she was quiet. She usually had a hood up covering her face, and she was always glued to her mom, like right beside her mom. You could never find her just playing in the yard, riding a bike, walking to school, like doing anything that a typical kid does. There's no record that she was in any clubs or activities or that she even had any friendships. There was also no public reporting that authorities could find of a steady in-person school routine in any of the years leading up to 2025. And so you can already see how Melodee did not have touch with anyone, really, in the outside world. Now, even the rare times that Melodee was out of her house, the isolation still seemed to follow her. One neighbor specifically came forward and said that she remembered seeing them at a nearby park. And I was shocked to even hear that Melodee was able to go to a park. But this person said that Melodee was really excited and she was begging her mom, Ashlee, to go and play. But her mom, Ashlee, was very hesitant about it. And so when this neighbor overheard this conversation, she was like, you know what, hey, if Melodee wants to play with my son, like this is someone she can go off with and have a good time. And Ashlee immediately shut it down and said to this woman, well, she actually doesn't get along well with other children. She's autistic, which by the way, there's no record of her being autistic at all. So I don't even know if that's true. But the isolation was really, really bad. She didn't go to school. She didn't have friends. She barely went out of the house. She wasn't in touch with family. Melodee was essentially on her own. And so all we really know for sure, and even that feels loose, is that Melodee is about 4'6" and around 60 pounds with brown eyes and curly brown hair. And the photo that you're seeing everywhere, the one that I'm probably going to be sharing the entirety of this video and that law enforcement is asking you to memorize, that's already 2 years old, and it's the most recent one we have. And that kind of isolation does not happen by accident. It was a choice, one that was made by her mother, who seemingly believed she was protecting her daughter from dangers that no one else could see. So to understand why Ashlee made that choice, we also have to go back into Ashlee's life. Now, according to Ashlee's mother, her childhood was unstable and frightening. Her father was allegedly abusive, and so there were periods where Ashlee and her mom would have to flee. They would have to hide, stay safe. They would have brief shelter stays. There were periods of homelessness. And this all was happening around the time Ashlee was 9 years old, which I personally think is important to note psychologically because that's the same age Melodee is now. And so the entire childhood that Ashlee experienced seemed to be one of trauma, and it doesn't seem like it got much better. By the time Ashlee was a teenager, her relationship with her own mother had become really tumultuous. Said that there were emerging mental health struggles that started to create a really big divide between them, on top of the struggles that they had already been through. Ashlee was becoming increasingly hard to understand. Her thinking and her reactions were really unpredictable. And her mom has claimed that she was diagnosed at some point with bipolar disorder, and this was causing her to experience mood swings and paranoia. And she apparently has the tendency of lying a lot, like making up stories for whatever reason. And it's all a part of, her response to this trauma and mental health. And so that constant strain took a heavy emotional toll on the both of them. And so those early years of Ashlee's life left really deep scars. She had an older daughter from a previous relationship that she ultimately lost custody of for reasons unknown. Finances were also another constant struggle. There was no steady job, multiple civil debt cases. She would open credit cards again and again to get by. And even then, Ashlee showed a tendency of staying really isolated and elusive because court records show that in several of these debt cases, no one could even locate her to serve her papers. Like, no one could ever figure out where Ashlee was. And unfortunately, this same pattern of life seemed to continue on with Melodee now in the middle of it. Now, relatives have said that Ashlee hadn't always been this withdrawn. There were several years when she worked, she kept in touch with family, she let people into her life. Both sides of Melodee's family still had some contact back then, but everything seemed to change in 2021. Things already, from how it's been explained, had started to decline. Ashlee was starting to struggle again a lot with her mental health. She seemed to be experiencing a lot of anxiety and paranoia, and unfortunately, things took a bad turn. So in 2021, Ashlee ended up hospitalized during a severe mental health episode, and they were really concerned about Melodee's safety. And so to avoid placing Melodee in foster care while her mom received treatment, they reached out pretty urgently to extended family. And they're like, listen, this is the situation that we're in. We think someone needs to take this little girl just for her own well-being, let her mom figure things out. And ultimately, it seems that Lily, the paternal grandmother, agreed to take Melodee, and she and her family began the formal custody and adoption process right away. But the moment that Ashlee was released from the hospital, at that point, she had full custody and guardianship of Melodee. I don't think there was like an open CPS investigation. It was kind of just this is the best option for Melodee, you should try it kind of deal. So she still had full rights and reportedly went and picked Melodee up. And at that point, when she realized the paternal family's custody efforts, she seemed to cut off contact. And that seemed to be the tipping point for Ashlee. I think she was worried about everyone trying to take her daughter away from her. From that point on, Melodee was almost entirely cut off from the world outside of her home with Ashlee. Now, after this 2021 incident, the people that were allowed briefly in Ashlee and Melodee's life said that Ashlee's fears and paranoia were really growing. She started to tell people that she and Melodee were being watched, they were being followed, targeted. In her mind, it seems that the isolation wasn't neglect, it was protection. I do think psychologically she truly believed she was keeping her little girl safe from these threats, but no one could understand where these threats were coming from. Like, who was chasing them, who was targeting them, what was going on. And so that single moment, a mother standing in her doorway, unable to say where her 9-year-old daughter was, it flipped everything on its head and started a nationwide search. Now, the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office knew that time was slipping away. And so within hours, they were back on Mars Avenue, knocking on every door, pulling every camera feed, hoping for even the smallest clue. At this point, they weren't even sure when Melodee had gone missing. There was literally not a single other person, like all the first people they turned to try to gather information, that had any sort of contact with this little girl. So basically, sometime between August enrollment, the last person other than her mother that had seen Melodee, and October 14th was the time frame that they were looking at. And that is a ton of time. So every single minute of those first 72 hours was spent frantically trying to narrow down even the most basic question in a disappearance, which was, when was the last time anyone saw this little girl? They ended up bringing in canine teams to sweep the house and the yard, searching for a scent that might tell them what happened. Neighbors were asked to check their Ring cameras, their dash cams, anything at all that might show the last time Melodee was seen at home. Detectives then widened that circle. They were reaching out to gas stations and convenience stores and nearby schools, every single main road out of Lompoc. They worked hand in hand with the school district to log every single unanswered call, every missed check-in since that August enrollment visit. And then the next day, on October 15th, the sheriff's office finally released Melodee's photo and description to the public for the first time. And even then, I think the public even knew with minimal information that something wasn't right, because Melodee is 9 years old, and it's so obvious that this picture that's being shared of her is not a recent one. And I think most people with just common sense are wondering, why does no one, a girl who allegedly is living and just fine with her mother, why is there not a more recent picture? Like, in this day and age, there's cameras everywhere. 5 to 10 random photos that I took of my children just from yesterday. How is there not a single other photo recently available of that little girl? And so this was the information that I was first seeing come out. When I had that gut feeling, I'm like, this is following a pattern we have seen far too many times where there is something really, really wrong. When this information was put out there, the community really stepped up and shared Melodee's photo as far and wide as they could. Tip lines were lighting up, and by October 18th, just 4 days after the welfare check and the investigation began, tips were already starting to point beyond California. And so the FBI stepped in and the search became multi-state, which left a lot of people scratching their heads. Like, what on earth could have led Melodee, this 9-year-old girl, out of state? Now, detectives at this point were working around the clock, matching timestamps, chasing sightings, mapping every single place Ashlee and Melodee might have gone. And the message at the end of every single briefing was the same. Like, this is not a typical missing child case. A little girl vanished, and the one person that should know where she is isn't cooperating. And that's never, ever a good sign. And so as those frantic first 72 hours unfolded, Melodee's family ended up stepping forward for the first time because Ashlee wasn't, and they were pleading with the public to help find the little girl that they love. On Melodee's father's side, the relatives who hadn't seen her in years spoke through tears. Melodee's paternal grandmother told reporters she still pictures Melodee as that little girl she saw the last time she saw her, saying, quote, "She's my granddaughter. I just want her safe. I want her home." They asked the public to look again at Melodee's photo, to share it everywhere, and to call in anything, even if it felt small. Ashlee's own mother also spoke out, saying that she really wanted people to remember that Ashlee loves Melodee deeply, and this isolation came from a place of fear, that she does believe her daughter is doing whatever she's doing or did whatever she did because she believed she was protecting her daughter. And while I'm sure that's something that she's really wrestling with, ultimately she ended the same way that everyone else did, help bring Melodee home. They also ended up stepping up and putting missing persons signs up, And a lot of the family ended up going directly to Ashlee's house to try and get information, to encourage her to talk, to try to understand why she wasn't cooperating with authorities when it came to the disappearance of Melodee.
I'm Leslie Molina. We begin our show tonight at Vanderburg Village, where community members gathered to protest outside of the house of a 9-year-old girl who has been missing for around 2 to 3 months. Our community reporter, Crystal Bermudez, will give us a look at what she saw at today's protest and what community members have to say.
4 signs like this one, all with "Where is Melodee" written on both sides, now line the front of the Vandenberg Village girl's home. I'm your community reporter, Crystal Bermudez, here along Mars Avenue, where community members came out Sunday afternoon, all to push for answers from the young girl's mom. The search for Melodee Buzzard began last week after a school administrator reported the girl's extended absence from an independent studies program. Authorities say Melodee's mother has been uncooperative with the investigation.
We're all looking for answers, but, we're showing up today so that way, she knows we care. We're here for Melodee, and hopefully she will come out and tell us where she's at.
Sheriff's deputies briefly addressing the growing crowd, saying they do not believe the child's mother has been home for the past 48 hours. Neighbors strongly disagree, telling me they've seen signs of activity.
Besides the garage being open almost 48 hours now, which we don't know if she knows or not, she was burning something in the fireplace last night, but paper was coming out.
Tensions rose as families demanded immediate information.
It's about time, organization is going to be key in this. If they're not going to press her until she cracks, I'm sorry, it's time.
And one of those people was Melodee's older half-sister. She had a much older half-sister on her father's side, and I believe that she had been trying to reconnect since they completely lost contact. And so she took it upon herself to go over to the Mars Avenue house in the early days of the search. And she knocked and waited, hoping for any word on her little sister. All she wanted to do was talk to Ashlee and make sure everything was okay. And unfortunately, Ashlee wasn't opening the door. And it seemed like this was the same pattern with anyone who went to the house, whether it was media, family members, people that had once been friends, anyone trying to go and ask her any information or have even the briefest of conversations was completely ignored.
You have made overtures, you've knocked on the door, you've asked if you can help, if there's something that you can do, if your sister Melodee has everything she needs. Can you walk me through some of those experiences?
Yeah, so I just been trying to make contact with Ashlee to get answers, and hoping that she would tell me something as to where Melodee may be or if she's okay.
And did you get any kind of response at all?
No.
What happened when you knocked on the door? Would she actually come to the door? Would she talk through the door? Would she open the door? Describe for me what your interactions were like.
So there was one interaction that I did have with her. Going to the door, I was knocking. I waited for her to come out. I was probably there for about 30 minutes. She finally came out to do the laundry, and that is when the news reporter caught it on camera that I went and spoke with Ashlee, asking her if she's okay, if Melodee's okay, if there's anything I could do for them. She did not answer any questions regarding Melodee, only to let me know that everything has been hard on her and her mental health, and that she didn't appreciate all the attention she's been getting, and the fact that I was there and knocking at the door when she didn't want to answer.
Did she seem hostile towards you?
No, she doesn't really have much emotion. Very just straight face, no emotion at all.
Melodee's sister left heartbroken because it is so hard to understand why a mother would not be doing everything in their power to find their own child. Neighbors and community members in Lompoc continued to come forward. People who had never met Melodee gathered for candlelight vigils. They reviewed their home camera footage. They posted her photo in local groups. The entire front of Ashlee's house was filled with photos of her daughter that some people said, they were putting up for her, thinking maybe she's just struggling mentally and needs some help getting through this. Others put them up saying they wanted to remind her, like, hey, you've got a daughter here that can't be found. Like, you've got to step up and say something. Do something for this little girl.
Pray for Melodee and her safety, Father God. We also pray for Ashlee. We lift her up, Father God, and we just ask that you continue to give us answers, Father God.
Melodee's father's side of the family organized the vigil, saying they refuse to give up hope.
If she's listening, we love you. We're here for you. And we just want you to be happy. This is my baby boy. And he's gone, and she was just a baby. But here, I took this picture at the hospital. I walking in, and he said, Mom, wait, Mom. I know your dad is watching you from heaven. I love you, baby.
Family members say the weight of each day without answers is unbearable.
I just can't stop thinking about this. And I hope something good comes out of this.
People across the Lompoc community tell me they felt called to come out.
Melodee, we love you. We care about you. We want you to be safe.
And as all those voices spread and all of these pictures were spread, investigators behind the scenes were quietly narrowing down the last verified sightings of Melodee, piecing together a timeline that was about to turn this entire case upside down. But not before more speculation naturally gathered on its own, directed toward Ashlee. Now, like I said, the public was very active in this case. Neighbors were constantly keeping an eye on Ashlee and her house and what was going on, and obviously news crews were constantly gathered outside of the Mars Avenue home. So there were always cameras rolling, reporters calling out questions, and Ashlee continued to never say a word. She would step outside briefly, eyes down. People would be screaming words at her about her daughter, and she would just walk past them without a glance, showing no emotion, no explanation, no nothing. And Melodee's older sister, that's exactly how she described her very, very brief conversation with Ashlee, saying that she was shocked at the lack of emotion that Ashlee seemed to have. But then a detail came out. Video was captured by a neighbor showing Ashlee tearing down her daughter's missing persons posters. The ones that family and community members had put up right outside of her door, hoping to jog a memory to bring her home. Her own mother tore them down, folded them all, and tossed them away. And it left everyone wondering what on earth was going on inside of that house and what really happened to Melodee. Why would her own mother not want her found? And with those rising questions, on October 30th, detectives ended up taking the next step. They executed search warrants at the Buzzard home. So they had already searched it. I think they've searched it a total of 3 or 4 times already. Do not quote me on that. I'm going off of memory, but I'm pretty sure that's what I heard in the most recent interviews online. But they were searching the Buzzard home again. They had a warrant for it. They also had a search warrant for a storage unit that Ashlee rented. And most intriguingly, and not initially explained, a rental car that was tied to both Melodee and her mom. The public didn't know it yet, but that rental car warrant would soon make heartbreaking sense and be the one thing that broke this entire case open. Just 3 days later, on November 3rd, the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office ended up having a press conference, and they laid everything they had out so far. And that included a timeline that explained everything and somehow nothing all at the same time. What Ashlee had failed to tell police this whole entire time, all of that silence, was that she and Melodee had actually gone on quite the road trip. Half of the country, to be exact. They went from California through Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and Kansas, all the way to Nebraska, then looping back the same way with stops in places that seemed to have no reason at all. Investigators said this was an erratic, unexplained road trip, like they were running away from something or possibly running toward it. And somewhere in the middle of this road trip is when Melodee Buzzard mysteriously went missing. And so here's what they pieced together day by day. So according to authorities, this all started the morning of October 7th. So we're talking like a week before Melodee was reported as missing, which in a way is a bit of a relief. At least Melodee hadn't gone missing immediately after having that meeting in August, and no one had known about it for like a month and a half. They weren't too far off the trail, which I think is such a huge saving grace in this situation. Now, apparently, surveillance from the counter of a Lompoc car rental business was found that shows Ashlee and Melodee renting a car. And specifically, it shows Ashlee standing at the counter wearing a light curly wig with bangs. And this is something that her family said is not at all unusual for her. Ashlee had worn wigs of all kinds over the years, but standing right next to her is Melodee with her hood up, but under that hood was a dark straight wig that completely covered her curly brown hair. It was obvious that for whatever reason, Ashlee had put her 9-year-old daughter in a disguise. And so that single image stopped a lot of people right in their tracks. What possible reason could she have for her daughter to be wearing a wig as well? Now, ultimately, the two of them ended up being given a white 2024 Chevy Malibu with the plate reading 9MNG101. And so from there, authorities started to track this car. You know, what purpose? Again, not only could they need to both be wearing wigs, which seemed obviously an attempt at a disguise, but why would they need a rental car? Where were they planning on going? And what were they planning on doing? But it just gets even weirder because by October the 8th, I guess Melodee and Ashlee were already on this impromptu road trip. And authorities said they had been following them along through cameras. They've not been very specific, but they immediately noticed on the 8th that those California plates that had originally been on that Chevy Malibu were now gone. And in its place was a New York plate reading HCG 9677. Now, no one knows exactly when or where the swap happened. I'm sure authorities probably know, but they've not shared that with anyone. No one knows if the plate was stolen, fake, or borrowed. All that authorities have shared is that it didn't belong on the car, and it also didn't belong to Ashlee. So clearly, she had put even more planning into this trip than anyone had realized, somehow found or obtained another plate, and again was attempting one more thing to disguise the two of them. Now, this whole first leg of the trip has been kept mostly hidden by authorities. There's no confirmed hotels, no clear stops, no footage of the two together after the pickup. Investigators really aren't saying much, probably because they want everyone instead to focus on October the 9th, which ended up being the last time Melodee can be seen on this road trip with her mother. Now, at this point, it seems that they had already driven from Lompoc to Nebraska. And so, honestly, I'm not even sure if there's time to sleep in any of that. I doubt there were any stops other than for necessity. I've not Google mapped it, which should come as a shock to all of you because Google Maps is my favorite thing to do. But I just feel like there probably wasn't much time there to do anything other than drive. And immediately upon reaching Nebraska, I guess they turned around and started the trek back because by early afternoon on the 9th, the Malibu is picked up on highway feeds near the Utah-Colorado line, so in the Green River Panguitch area. And in this footage, from what authorities have said, you can clearly see both Melodee and Ashlee inside of the car. Within a few hours of this footage, the Chevy Malibu was spotted again, heading west through northwestern Arizona, so near Primm, Nevada. But in those later clips, Ashlee is now visible alone. Melodee is gone. She's nowhere in the car, nowhere to be seen. So somewhere between the Green River, Panguitch area of the Utah-Colorado border to Primm, Nevada, Arizona area, something happened to Melodee Buzzard. Authorities confirmed that the next morning, October 10th, Ashlee returned the car to the same Lompoc lot. The original California plates were put back on at this point, and I feel like in some cases you could easily chalk this up to, maybe she was just sleeping in the back seat, and that's why you didn't see her in the car on the later camera footage the day of the 9th. And, maybe she was waiting outside for her mom at the rental lot. But every single thing that we know so far about the way Ashlee treated Melodee and their dynamic, Melodee did not leave Ashlee's side if they were out in public. They were glued together, Melodee with her hood up, With that being the norm, the chances that Ashlee let Melodee out of her sight for even a second seems pretty slim. And so this is the window that authorities are currently looking at and asking the public to fill, October 9th to the 10th. They're asking for people at gas stations, truck stops, motels, people that operate highway cameras to look for anything at all showing that white Chevy Malibu or Ashlee or possibly a little girl that looks like Melodee. Because while it does seem like they were driving with minimal breaks, I mean, they eventually had to get gas. They eventually had to go to the bathroom or eat a little bit of food. And somewhere in those hours, something happened that Ashlee, for whatever reason, will not explain. So a case that had already started off as really strange and questionable had taken an even weirder turn because this wasn't just a missing child anymore. It was a mother who drove her daughter halfway across the country and came home alone. Authorities have been really relying on the public because while the FBI is involved, local authorities are involved, I'm sure they're probably also working with all of the different local agencies along this route. You guys, that is such a large area of space. Like, I thought it was mind-blowing knowing they were trying to search for a singular moment in a month-and-a-half time frame, but not only were they looking for that single moment, and by the way, somehow managed to narrow it down incredibly fast, but they're also now looking for one specific area along potentially several states. And so they're really pushing the public to do everything they can to help. Think back about a woman who was possibly wearing a wig, specifically that curly blonde wig with bangs, or potentially she may have even brought other wigs with her. Think about if you saw a little girl who might have been wearing a wig too, because honestly, in my personal opinion, it feels like the disguises that were supposed to help them disappear are actually something that might make people remember them even more. And so authorities had released all of this information. They also released a route map to the public so that people could hopefully think back if they were traveling, truck drivers along the way. And almost immediately, it seems like people did start remembering. Tips were trickling in and then they were pouring in, and some of them were especially interesting. Now, I want to preface this by saying that the tip that I'm about to get into, I cannot even confirm that this tip directly went to authorities. Authorities know about it at this point. But I learned of it through this person actually coming forward to the media first. So out of Phillips 66 in Junction, Utah, which is a teeny tiny town right off of Highway 89, a store clerk actually recognized Ashlee from the wig. So like I said, the disguise actually ended up being her downfall when the photos ended up being released of Ashlee and Melodee at the car rental lot. Now, this clerk claimed that on October 9th at around 5 p.m., someone that she strongly believes was Ashlee poked her head into the store, like just opened the door enough to say something, was like, hey, you know, you got a whole bunch of kittens outside. And without saying anything else, she just closed the door and headed back to her car. And the clerk said it was a really bizarre encounter. And she's like, okay, like a bunch of kittens outside. Like, what is this woman talking about? And so she went to go and look at what was going on. And she ended up seeing this woman walk to a car and get into a car that had California plates, which was memorable because they were not in California. And this woman who looked like Ashlee also wasn't alone. She said that she was with another woman, keyword woman, with bright purple hair. This clerk said that that person in a purple wig was not a child. It was not Melodee. It had to have been a woman in at least her 30s. Now, according to the timeline and the area, this would have been after what authorities are claiming is the last sighting of Melodee. And so this obviously raised a lot of questions when this woman came forward with this tip. You know, was this another sighting of Melodee, placing her further along in the trip? Maybe this woman saw Melodee at a weird angle and because of the wig or for whatever reason just thought it was a 30-year-old woman. Or was it actually a 30-year-old woman, someone that Ashlee maybe picked up along the way? Or maybe this person had something to do with wherever Melodee disappeared to. Now, I know that FBI agents did go to several different gas stations along the route that Ashlee and Melodee took. I'm sure they were trying to find any sort of surveillance footage and that initial push for answers and narrowing down the timeline, but I'm not able to confirm if they went to check out this particular gas station or even if they checked out this particular tip. Now, obviously, I'm sure the FBI knows about it just because it was all over the media for quite some time. But several other news outlets have since tried to reach out to this woman about what she saw, maybe get more details, see if it was ever followed up on. But it seems like she's now not answering any questions and doesn't want to comment at all. And I'm personally hoping it's because authorities did go to her and were somehow able to verify this tip and have said, you know what, now it's time to be quiet about it. Thanks for bringing this forward. But again, I can't confirm that, so we'll see if it ultimately ends up leading anywhere. But just again, given the timing, the area, how specific this wig is, I feel like it's a huge chance this really was Ashlee. And if so, who the heck was this potentially older woman in a purple wig in the car with her? Obviously, authorities have narrowed their focus because all of this evidence just points even more toward Ashlee having crucial knowledge about Melodee's disappearance and her location, but she's still not talking. And so her lack of cooperation was made even worse when family and investigators saw that some of Ashlee's social media accounts were being deleted. Like she was actively trying to delete any trace of herself. It's like she's trying to disappear even further. And that is going to make this investigation that much harder because there's already so little information about Melodee. But now that her mom is also trying to just slip even further into the abyss when she could hold the only answers is so devastating for everybody involved. But then an unrelated incident ended up offering a new path to answers. So on November 6th, just a few weeks ago, there was a man who I believe was a paralegal. Information's a little bit murky. But this man apparently knew Ashlee since like 2014, very loosely, since she didn't keep most people close. And he heard about the fact that Melodee was missing. So he reached out to Ashlee to offer to help with the search, to help her in any way she could possibly need to find her daughter. He apparently went to her home in Vandenberg Village to talk to her about what was going on November 6th. What started as a conversation quickly turned distressing. Now, according to his later statement to police, just to give you a little insight as to how this ends up going, while he was at the house, Ashlee became incredibly upset after sharing information that she apparently regretted sharing with him. Ashlee allegedly pulled out a box cutter, locked several locks on the door to her home, and would not let this man leave. Now, eventually, she calmed down and he was able to get out safely. There was no harm done to him from what I have seen. And right away, he called police. Now, I want to say really quickly that this man has stressed over and over that he's fine, okay? He does not want the focus to be on him. He wants all the focus to stay on finding Melodee. What happened to him was absolutely scary, but he doesn't want it to end up overshadowing what is the most important in this case, which is a missing child. But given the circumstances, he obviously thought it was important to tell authorities, even more so because some outlets that are claiming to have spoken with this man have reported that the information Ashlee shared, the information that sent her spiraling, was that she left Melodee with someone in Utah. Now, I want to make it so clear, and this is why I have such a hard time covering very recent cases. This information is very unreliable at the moment, okay? This man himself, from what I've seen, has not come forward and said these words out of his own mouth. We're relying on the media relaying them. And I'm just the kind of person where I want to hear him say it himself before I'm going to fully believe that. Also, according to the media, he's not even sure he believes this information. This man has said that he's very well aware of Ashlee's mental health history, that she tends to make things up, that lying is unfortunately a part of her struggles with mental health. And so he has no idea if anything that she told him that day is even reliable information. Now, authorities, again, have not confirmed this claim, and it seems they're just kind of treating it as one tip among many. But I find it very interesting that this all happens 3 days after information is finally released that Melodee was last seen with her mother, specifically traveling in Utah. Because up till this point, authorities weren't releasing anything. And the whole public was like, okay, her mom seems like she has information and she's just not sharing it. None of this behavior is normal behavior and what you would expect of a parent. There's just so little known right now, and it's impossible to know for sure even what exactly happened, let alone the intentions behind it. Now, the next day, November 7th, Ashlee Buzzard was arrested on suspicion of felony false imprisonment charges tied directly to that November 6th incident. And so when the news first broke that she was arrested, a lot of us, myself included, assumed, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, she's being arrested in connection with the disappearance of Melodee. Like, it felt like the case was finally breaking. But right away, the sheriff's office was very quick to clarify, like, no, this charge is unrelated to her disappearance, at least on paper. With Ashlee suddenly in custody now, it seems like investigators hoped that this situation would give them a new opportunity, maybe time to question her further, pressure to finally get answers about where Melodee is. All of the things that have so far evaded them. This is obviously a tactic you see time and time again where authorities want answers from someone. Now, Ashlee ended up being booked with a $100,000 bond, and it actually was a very interesting type of bond. I can't remember what the name of it is, but essentially any money that is posted to make her bond would have to be vetted, like where it comes from. And I think this was so specifically done just in case that money ended up coming from someone with information about Melodee. So far, they had connected nobody to Ashlee, okay? I mean, we don't know if she even had people on the fringes of her life. And so if she had really given Melodee to someone in Utah, likely isn't going to be a random stranger, okay? It would have to be one of the very few people that she, for whatever reason, allowed into her inner circle and trusted. And that person might be one of the few people willing to bail her out of jail. And so I think they were really hoping this might lend some sort of answers. But regardless, all of that ended up coming crashing down because on November 12th, Ashlee appeared for arraignment in Santa Maria Superior Court, and she pleaded not guilty right away. And in a surprising twist that many people feel very conflicted about, the judge ended up revoking her bond entirely and released her under strict conditions. So she has a GPS ankle monitor and strict no contact orders with this man. And so a lot of people are mad about this, saying she's clearly the last person to see her own daughter, who's now missing. She's not being cooperative. She's known for hiding and being elusive. Like, how on earth could a judge just release her like that? I think the judge was just doing what they were supposed to do and ensured that for the time being, Ashlee still has her rights. Now, the next court date she has is November 19th, but that just seems to be like nothing of substance should come out in that. If it does, I will let you know. But I don't think anything will really happen. It might give another next court date, but I'll try to let you know down below if anything meaningful occurred.
A fast end to that felony charge against the mother of a missing 9-year-old girl.
The felony false imprisonment charge against Ashlee Buzzard was dismissed by a judge today. News Channel reporter Jared Zinn was in court and explains why the charge was dismissed.
Ashlee Buzzard was charged with felony false imprisonment after she was accused of preventing a man named Tyler Brewer from leaving her Vandenberg Village home on November 6th. Brewer, a local paralegal, had previously told Your News Channel that Ashlee became agitated during this encounter when he mentioned a location along a 3-day drive Ashlee took with Melodee across several states. Brewer had said Ashlee refused to let him leave her home. On Thursday, an audio recording of the encounter was presented in court, and it did not reflect Brewer's prior accounts of what happened. In the audio recording, there was no discussion of a specific location where Melodee might be. Ashlee's tone remained consistent throughout the talk, and Ashlee opened the door for Brewer to leave her home after he said he wanted to leave at least twice. The court limited discussion specifically to the November 6th incident, and Brewer appeared to have difficulty answering some questions.
I came today because I thought they were going to talk about my granddaughter. Maybe she'll say something. But everything was about that guy.
While Judge Stephen Dunkel acknowledged not wanting to make light of Brewer's anxiety disorder, Dunkel felt there wasn't sufficient probable cause to move forward. The judge dismissed the case. Ashlee is no longer required to wear an ankle monitor.
I will never give up search for my grandbaby. I will keep calling the detectives and the FBI and see what they tell me, but I'm not going to stop until see what happens.
But regardless, all of this, the charge, the conditions, the court schedule, all of that's its own separate thing. So far, it has not answered the only question that really matters here, which is where is Melodee? Ashlee is still not talking, so she's now been released. So any hope that custody alone was going to bring answers has completely faded for now. And that silence from Ashlee has left the public very divided on how they read her behavior. Now, to some, her calm demeanor and her lack of visible emotion suggests that she believes Melodee is somewhere safe, that she put her somewhere that she won't be found, everything will be all right, and she feels like she doesn't have to worry anymore. It doesn't seem like she's holding a bunch of anxious or upset energy, like she's done something that she regrets or anything like that. And a lot of people think that goes hand in hand with why she's not kind of broken down and revealed anything. But for a lot of people, that idea is very hard to accept because Ashlee wouldn't even let Melodee play in the park or live daily life without keeping her directly by her side. So the thought of Ashlee suddenly trusting a stranger halfway across the country with her daughter after years of guarding her so fiercely from even her own family, it just doesn't seem to add up. And so that leads me to the next kind of camp people are in, where they're saying that detached attitude Ashlee seems to have feels cold, like there's something darker behind it. Now, there's unfortunately a tragic pattern that we have seen before where severe mental illness twists a parent's fear or paranoia into irreversible harm. And the belief that, if I can't have them, no one can, or I'm saving them from something worse. Cases like Timothy Pitson come to mind, for example. That was a really challenging case, but a perfect example of that. So unfortunately, a lot of people believe this case could have a very tragic ending. But at the end of the day, all of this is just speculation. And honestly, mental illness is a hell of a thing. And trying to understand this case through a purely rational lens, I don't think it's going to get us there because I genuinely don't think that's the state of mind that Ashlee was or is in. Here is where all of this information leaves the case. Now, investigators have said they looked into the possibility of an outside threat. If Ashlee was saying that she was concerned about the safety of herself and her daughter, they obviously are going to take that seriously. And so they did look into it. Maybe there is someone out there she really was trying to protect them from, but so far they have found no evidence at all of an outside threat, which seems to just lean heavier into the idea that this was Ashlee's mental health speaking. Now, both her family and law enforcement seem to agree that Ashlee did truly feel like she and Melodee were in danger, and she acted on that belief. And so that leaves a very real possibility that Melodee may be alive and in someone else's care, possibly under a different name, possibly with people who don't even realize that she's technically considered a missing person. And while obviously there's a lot of different possibilities out on the table right now, if there's even a slight chance that Melodee is out there alive and well somewhere, that is huge and makes the search to find her that much more urgent. So if you live or work or have traveled along their route October 7th through the 10th, I will have all the maps that I can find put up if you're watching this in video form, but near Green River and Panguitch specifically on the Utah-Colorado line through Northwest Arizona past Primm, like that exact same area I've said over and over again, please take a few minutes to look back on October 9th and 10th. Authorities are asking you to keep an eye out for that white 2024 Chevy Malibu with either those California plates on them or the New York plates. Also look for someone that looks like Ashlee traveling with a child who looks like Melodee. Both of them may have different wigs on. Again, I actually think that might be a sticking point, looking for them to help identify them better. Maybe they introduced themselves under different names. They had to stop for food and gas and bathroom breaks. Several people out there had to have seen them. It's just getting these people to know they saw something important. And I feel like it's really, even if you've seen this case all over your feed, like I have for a month at this point, there are majority of people have no idea who Ashlee Buzzard is or who Melodee Buzzard is. So that's why it's so important to keep talking about this, because there will always be someone who doesn't know, and they could be harboring the one thing that could help piece this all together. If a child showed up in your world suddenly with, a new name, no paperwork, a story that keeps changing, please take a second look. And if you find anything at all on surveillance, whether that be home surveillance or maybe you have like a camera in your car that you have on at all times while driving, if you drive a Tesla, like any of those things, please look into it on that date. Do not overwrite it. Save the original, write down the date and time that appear on the video, the location, and reach out to the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office or to your local FBI office so that they can get this information into the right hands. This truly needs to be a huge community effort, you guys, because the FBI is incredible. Local police departments are incredible, but they need help from the public. Now, at the moment, authorities have made it clear that they don't need assistance in the search. They do have trained professionals out there doing the best job that they can. So the best thing that you can do to help find Melodee is share her picture and her story across social media platforms. Share it with your friends and your family. Again, if you live along that route, put up flyers. We're also heading into the holiday season where tons of people are going to be traveling or with family that they're not typically with often. And so that presents an even larger opportunity to get Melodee's name and face out there, or for people to be like, hey, you know what? I did notice something strange in my neighborhood now that you mention it. Melodee is 9 years old, you guys. She is loved. She deserves to be safe. It's also important to note that Melodee has grown up in this isolated lifestyle for so long that all these fears that Ashlee has, whether they are real or perceived, it's very likely that Melodee shares the same exact ones. The only example that she has had as a child in the most important years of her life so far have been her mom. And so whatever her mom's reality has been, that's been Melodee's reality. And so a lot of people are like, well, she's 9. She's old enough to understand and to come forward and say something. And if your normal has been being completely isolated, she's probably not going to push far out of that. The only thing that has me holding on to hope that if Melodee is out there, that she will recognize, maybe something about this isn't right, is the fact that she seemed to be fighting with her mom about being able to go and play with other children. Regardless of what your upbringing is, Melodee was also a very curious child. And I think what that neighbor witnessed was Melodee being like, hey, I see all these other kids playing and doing these things. Like, why can't I do the same thing? And so maybe despite everything I just said, she is out there and is going to eventually recognize that something is clearly not right and something is going on. And hopefully that will lead her to come forward, or whoever she's with to come forward if she is with anyone. This case is just so upsetting. It is so upsetting. I have a 9-year-old myself. I could not imagine my 9-year-old just being out there like halfway across the country from me, possibly being scared someone was coming to get him, or, not understanding why I just dropped him off somewhere. Like, this case has really messed me up. I think it hits so many people way too close to home. Now, before we end, I do need to say something out loud. This case is so fresh, you guys. It is active, it is open, it is unfolding right in front of us, and everything that we say online can be seen by the people that are living it. Currently, family members who are desperate for Melodee, investigators working around the clock. And not only that, but everything we say online also has the chance to be seen by Ashlee herself. Stray away from these current cases because I feel like it's so easy for them to turn into like sensationalized chaos. And I just want to say that if the internet hate bombs a clearly unstable person, floods Ashlee with threats and judgment and cruelty, I'm so scared that she's going to shut down forever, okay? We don't have to understand her actions or agree with any of them or forgive them to remember that she's still a human being. More importantly, a human being whose next decision could decide whether a little girl ever comes home. Basic decency isn't the same as taking sides. It's just leaving the door open for answers. So I just wanted to say that to remind you guys in the comment section, on every share, wherever this story goes, be careful with your words. Stay respectful. Keep the focus on Melodee. Ashlee is in a very fragile mental state at the moment. And now is not the time to be slinging mud when that one person that might have answers could very quickly ensure those answers never come out. So please keep the focus on Melodee, share her photo, share the facts, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to help bring her home. Now, I'm going to try my hardest to keep a pinned comment and possibly the description updated with confirmed developments as often as I can, but I do suggest following me on social media, areas like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, because that's usually where I go when I have updates immediately after I get them. And obviously, if anything huge comes out, I will make sure I sit down and create a video to kind of bring you guys along everything that is happening, everything that is unfolded. And hopefully the next video that I make on this case is about finding Melodee safe and sound. Now, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and go, you guys. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to Melodee's story. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button to become a part of the Howlin' fam so that we can hopefully bring them home together or bring them justice together. And I will see you guys in my next video.